You said you loved me. You said for better, for worse. Now look, they aren't mine.
Please forgive me.
Now tell me, whose child are they?
Please forgive me. It was just one night stand with my ex.
Rich man discovers twins not his. The eve of forever. December 2014. The Harmattan wind came early that year, sweeping down from the Sahara to blanket Lagos in a thin, dusty haze that turned the afternoon sun into a pale orange coin hanging low in the sky. The air carried the smell of dry earth and distant fires, and the city moved slower than usual, as if the weather itself demanded a pause, a moment of reflection before the chaos of the Christmas season fully descended. In her father's house on Adebayo Street in Ikeja, Adana sat before a three-paneled mirror in her childhood bedroom, surrounded by women who had known her since birth. The room hummed with the rhythm of their voices, aunties arguing about the correct way to arrange her geli, cousins passing plates of small chops, her mother issuing instructions like a general preparing for battle. Outside, the muffled sounds of Lagos traffic filtered through the curtains, but inside this room, time had slowed to something sacred. Adana, lift your chin. Let me see your neck. Her mother, Mama Rose, commanded, her fingers gentle but insistent as she adjusted the coral beads that would later accompany the wedding gown. These beads belong to your grandmother. She wore them at her wedding in 1965, and I wore them at mine in 1987. Now they are yours. Do you know what that means? Adana met her mother's eyes in the mirror. Continuity, she whispered. Legacy. Continuity. Legacy. Mama Rose pressed a kiss to her daughter's forehead, leaving a faint imprint of her lipstick. And responsibility. Marriage is not just about love, my daughter. It is about carrying forward what your ancestors built. It is about choosing someone worthy of the name they gave you. Adana nodded, but her eyes flickered almost imperceptibly toward her phone, which lay face down on the dresser beside a bowl of ground nuts and bottles of nail polish. The screen had lit up an hour ago, casting a brief glow that she had pretended not to notice. But she had seen the message. Of course she had seen it. I'm at the Eco Hotel. Suite 410. Just for today. Please, Adana. One conversation. For old time's sake. The number was unfamiliar, but she knew it immediately. Tund had changed his number when he moved to London 6 years ago, but something about the phrasing, the cadence of the words, was unmistakably him. Tund, who had left with promises of marriage and a better life abroad. Tund, who had called less and less frequently until the calls stopped altogether. Tund, who had broken her heart so thoroughly that she had spent 2 years unable to look at another man without feeling the phantom ache of his absence. Auntie, are you listening? Her youngest cousin, Amara, waved a bottle of polish in front of her face. I asked if you want shimmer or matte for your toes. The wedding is tomorrow. You need to decide. Matte, Adana said automatically. Definitely matte. A woman who knows her mind. Her Auntie Chioma approved from her perch on the bed. That's good. That Chief of Fani Okonkwo. He's a good man. But a good man needs a woman who knows her mind. Otherwise, the house girls will run circles around both of you. Laughter rippled through the room, but Adana's smile felt painted on, fragile as Harmattan dust. Ifani. She thought of him now, his steady presence, his quiet confidence, the way he looked at her like she was the answer to a question he'd been asking his whole life. He wasn't flashy like Tund, hadn't swept her off her feet with grand gestures and poetic declarations. Instead, he had shown up, consistently, reliably, for 2 years. He had brought her mother medicine when she was sick. He had remembered her favorite snacks. He had proposed not on bended knee with a crowd watching, but on a quiet Tuesday evening, sitting on her father's veranda, holding her hand and saying, Adana, I want to spend the rest of my life making sure you never doubt that you are loved. She had said yes, and she had meant it. So why was Tund's message burning a hole in her mind? Mama, she said suddenly, her voice steadier than she felt. I need some air, just for a few minutes. To think. Mama Rose looked at her sharply, the way mothers do when they sense something beneath the surface. but she softened almost immediately. Ah, the bride needs her moment. Go, my daughter. Walk in the backyard. Breathe the harmattan air. But don't be long. We still have to try the veil with the gelly. Adana stood, her wrapper rustling around her ankles, and slipped out of the room before anyone could see the tremor in her hands. She walked through the sitting room, past her father dozing in his armchair with the newspaper spread across his chest, and out the back door into the small garden where her mother grew peppers and tomatoes. The harmattan air hit her like a wall, dry, cool, smelling of dust and distance. She leaned against the mango tree that had stood in this yard since her own childhood, its branches bare this time of year, and pulled out her phone. The message was still there, waiting. She should delete it. She knew she should delete it. Tund was her past, a chapter closed so long ago that the pages had yellowed. Ifani was her future, solid and real and present. Tomorrow, she would become his wife. Tomorrow, she would make vows before God and her family and everyone who mattered. But Tund was here, now, in Lagos, and he wanted to see her. One conversation, he had said, for old time's sake. What harm could one conversation do? She thought about the last time she had seen him. At the airport, 6 years ago, his eyes bright with the promise of London, his arms wrapped around her so tightly she could barely breathe. I'll come back for you, he had whispered into her hair. Wait for me. I'll come back, and we'll build our life together. She had waited. For 2 years, she had waited, ignoring the well-meaning advice of friends who told her to move on, checking her phone obsessively, jumping every time her email pinged. And then, slowly, the calls had become less frequent. The emails had stopped. She had heard through mutual friends that he was doing well, that he was climbing the corporate ladder, that he had met someone, a white girl, they said, a British girl with blonde hair and a flat in London. She had cried for a week, and then she had picked up the pieces and moved on. So why did her heart still race at the sight of his name? She typed a response before she could talk herself out of it. Which hotel did you say? The reply came instantly. Eco Hotel. Suite 410. I'm here until evening. Please, Adana. Just give me an hour. She stared at the screen for a long moment. Then she walked back inside, called out to her mother that she was going to run a quick errand, something about the caterer needing final confirmation, and grabbed her car keys before anyone could ask questions. The drive to Victoria Island took 45 minutes, traffic allowing her too much time to think. She rehearsed what she would say. I'm happy, Tund. I've moved on. I just came to say goodbye properly, so we can both close this chapter. She practiced her tone, firm but not cruel, final but not angry. She would be gracious. She would be dignified. She would show him that she had healed, that she was whole, that she no longer needed anything from him. But when she pulled into the Eco Hotel parking lot and saw the gleaming tower rising against the pale harmattan sky, her resolve began to waver. This was where wealthy tourists stayed, where business executives held meetings, where the elite of Lagos gathered for weddings and conferences. Tund had done well for himself. The hotel choice made that clear. She parked her silver Toyota Corolla, a gift from Ifani, who had insisted she needed something reliable, and sat for a moment with her hands on the steering wheel. Through the windshield, she watched a man in a tailored suit stride toward the entrance, laughing at something on his phone. He looked confident, successful, at home in this world of polished marble and uniformed doormen. Was that what Tund looked like now? She didn't notice the other car pulling into the lot a few minutes after hers. She didn't see the man behind the wheel pause, squint at her vehicle, then at her retreating figure as she walked toward the hotel entrance. She didn't know that Kunal, Ifani's best friend since childhood, had chosen this hotel for a client meeting, or that he would recognize her car immediately because he had helped Ifani pick it out at the dealership. She only knew that when she stepped into the elevator and pressed the button for the 4th floor, her heart was pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. Suite 410 was at the end of a long, carpeted hallway lined with abstract art and brass sconces. Adana walked slowly, her heels sinking slightly into the plush carpet, and stopped before the door. For a moment, she considered turning back. She could still leave. She could pretend she never came, delete the messages, throw herself back into the whirlwind of wedding preparations. But her hand was already rising, already knocking. The door opened. Tun stood before her, and for a moment, she forgot to breathe. He looked older, more distinguished, the softness of youth carved away to reveal sharp cheekbones and a stronger jaw. He wore a simple white shirt, sleeves rolled to the elbow, and dark trousers that looked expensive. His eyes, warm and brown and full of something that might have been regret, swept over her face like he was memorizing it. "Adana," he breathed. "Look at you." She found her voice. Tunned. He stepped aside, gesturing her in. "Please, come in." The suite was beautiful, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the lagoon, a sitting area with cream-colored sofas, a bowl of fresh fruit on the coffee table. But Adana barely registered any of it. She stood in the middle of the room, arms wrapped around herself, watching him close the door. "You look well," she said. "London agrees with you. London is cold and gray half the year." He smiled, and it was the same smile she remembered, warm, slightly crooked, capable of making her believe anything. "But it's been good to me, yes. Career-wise, at least. And personally?" The question slipped out before she could stop it. He held her gaze. "Personally has been complicated. I made mistakes, Adana. A lot of mistakes. Leaving you the way I did. That was the biggest one." She looked away, walking to the window to watch the boats moving slowly across the lagoon. "That was a long time ago, Tund. I've moved on. I'm getting married tomorrow." "I know." He came to stand beside her, close but not touching. "That's why I had to see you. I couldn't let you start a new life without telling you face to face how sorry I am. Without you knowing that I've regretted every single day since I let you go." "Tund, let me finish." His voice was soft but urgent. "I was young and stupid, and I thought the world was waiting for me in London. I thought there would always be time to come back, to make things right. But time doesn't work that way, does it? It moves forward whether you're ready or not. And one day I woke up and realized I had lost the only woman I ever truly loved." Her eyes burned. She blinked rapidly, refusing to let the tears fall. "You should have thought about that before you stopped calling. Before you stopped answering my emails. Before you started dating someone else." He flinched. "You heard about that? Lagos is small, Tund. News travels. Sarah was a mistake. A distraction. It didn't last." He turned to face her fully. "Adana, I'm not asking you to leave your fiancé. I'm not asking you to change your life. I needed to see you. To tell you the truth. To have one moment where we're honest with each other before you become someone else's wife." She looked at him then. Really looked. Searching for the boy she had loved. The man who had broken her. The stranger standing before her now. And somewhere in the space between memory and reality, something shifted. One moment, she heard herself say, "That's all." He reached for her hand, and she let him. Outside, in the hotel lobby, Kunnel sat in an armchair with a newspaper he wasn't reading, his eyes fixed on the elevator bank. He had seen Adana walk through the lobby. He had seen which elevator she took. He had watched the numbers climb and stop at 4. He should leave. He knew he should leave. This was none of his business, and whatever was happening upstairs, it would only cause pain if it came to light. But he couldn't move, couldn't tear his eyes away from those elevator doors. 20 minutes passed, 30, 45, and then the elevator chimed, and Adana stepped out. Her hair was slightly disheveled. Her eyes were red-rimmed. She walked quickly toward the exit, not looking left or right, not seeing the man in the armchair who watched her go. Kunnel waited until she was gone, then walked to the parking lot. He found her silver Corolla easily, noted the license plate, felt his stomach drop. He had hoped he was wrong. He had prayed he was wrong. But the evidence was there, undeniable as the Harmattan's son. He pulled out his phone, stared at Afani's name in his contacts, and couldn't bring himself to press call. How do you tell your best friend, 24 hours before his wedding, that his bride-to-be just spend an hour in a hotel room with another man. He couldn't. Not today. Maybe not ever. He drove home in silence, the weight of a terrible secret settling into his bones. Adana drove home in a daze. The Harmattan haze had thickened, turning the city into a dreamscape of blurred edges and muffled sounds. She gripped the steering wheel tightly, focusing on the road, on the traffic, on anything except what had just happened in Suite 410. One last time, she told herself. Just one last time, to say goodbye properly. But as she pulled into her father's driveway and saw the lights blazing in the window, heard the laughter of her aunties and cousins floating into the night, she felt the first cold tendrils of guilt wrap around her heart. Tomorrow, she would marry Afani. Tomorrow, she would become his wife. And she would carry this secret with her forever. She walked inside, accepted a plate of food she couldn't eat, smiled at her mother's fussing, and pretended everything was normal. But that night, lying in her childhood bed, staring at the ceiling, she couldn't sleep. She kept seeing Tun's face, hearing his voice, feeling his hands on her skin. She kept remembering the way he had held her at the door, whispering, "This isn't goodbye, Adana. This is just until next time." She should have corrected him. She should have made it clear that there would be no next time. But she hadn't. And somewhere in the darkness, in the deepest part of her that she didn't want to examine, she wasn't sure she wanted there to be. The next morning, she walked down the aisle on her father's arm and became Mrs. Afani Okonkwo. Afani beamed at her with such pure, uncomplicated love that her guilt sharpened into something almost physical. He kissed her softly at the altar, and she kissed him back, and for a moment, just a moment, she convinced herself that everything would be okay. Kunal stood beside Afani, forcing a smile, watching Adana with eyes that saw too much. And somewhere in the crowd, invisible and unknown, the consequences of that December afternoon were already taking root, waiting to bloom into a truth that would shatter everything. The weight of a name. One last time. December 2014. The door clicked shut behind her, and the sound seemed to echo in the sudden silence of Suite 410. Adana stood with her back against the wood, her hands clasped in front of her, watching Tund move toward the small bar cart in the corner of the sitting area. He moved differently now, more deliberate, more controlled. 6 years in London had polished away whatever rough edges he'd once had, leaving behind something sleek and carefully constructed. "Can I get you something to drink?" he asked, his hand hovering over a bottle of red wine. "They have a decent South African Cabernet, or something stronger, if you prefer." "I shouldn't be here long enough to drink anything," she said, but her voice came out softer than she intended. "I told my mother I was going to see the caterer." Tun smiled, that same crooked smile that had once made her believe in forever. "The caterer? Of course. Very bridal of you." He poured himself a glass of wine anyway, leaning against the bar cart with studied casualness. "So, tomorrow's the big day. Tomorrow's the big day. Chief Ifani Okonkwo." He rolled the name around his mouth like he was tasting it. "I did some research after I heard. Import and export business. Real estate. Very successful. Very established. He's a good man, Tund." "I'm sure he is." Tund took a sip of wine, watching her over the rim of the glass. "Is he good to you?" Adana finally moved from the door, walking to the window that faced the lagoon. The Harmattan haze had thickened throughout the afternoon, turning the water into a gray expanse that seemed to stretch into infinity. Somewhere out there, cargo ships waited to enter the port, their horns sounding faint and mournful in the distance. "He's kind," she said quietly. "He remembers the small things, how I take my tea, which foods I don't like, the names of my cousins. He brought my mother medicine when she was sick last year, without me even asking. He proposed on her veranda, just the two of us. No spectacle, no pressure." She turned to face him. "He loves me, Tund. Truly loves me. And I love him." Tund set down his wine glass and walked toward her, stopping just close enough that she could smell his cologne. Something expensive and unfamiliar. Nothing like the cheap body spray he'd worn in their university days. I'm happy for you, Adana. I mean that. Are you? I am. He held her gaze. I made my choices. I have to live with them. But that doesn't mean I stop caring about you. That doesn't mean I don't lie awake some nights wondering what would have happened if I'd been braver, if I'd come back sooner, if I'd fought for you the way I should have. Her throat tightened. Tun, don't. I'm not trying to guilt you. I'm not trying to change your mind. He reached out, slowly, giving her time to pull away, and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. I just needed you to know. Before you become someone else's wife, I needed you to know that losing you is the greatest regret of my life. She should step back. She knew she should step back. Every rational thought in her head screamed at her to put distance between them, to thank him for his honesty, to wish him well and walk out that door. But her feet wouldn't move. Tell me about London, she heard herself say. Tell me about your life there. He looked surprised, but recovered quickly. It's cold. Gray. The people are polite but distant. I've built a career, consulting mostly. I make good money, have a nice flat, go to the gym, do all the things successful singles do. A self-deprecating smile. It looks good on paper. But at the end of the day, I come home to an empty apartment and wonder how I got here. No serious relationship. There was someone. Sarah. It ended a year ago. He shrugged. She wanted marriage, children, the whole package. I realized I didn't want those things with her. I realized I'd been comparing every woman I met to you, and none of them measured up. Adana laughed, but there was no humor in it. That's not fair, Tund. You can't hold other women to the standard of a ghost. You're not a ghost to me, Adana. You never were. He moved closer, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body. I've followed your life from afar, you know. Through mutual friends, through social media. I saw when you started dating Afani. I saw when you got engaged. I told myself I was happy for you, and mostly I was. But part of me, the selfish, stupid part, kept hoping. Hoping for what? Hoping that maybe, somewhere in your heart, you still remembered us. That maybe, if I came back and saw you one last time, I'd find out you'd been waiting too. The tears she'd been fighting finally spilled over. Tund, I waited for 2 years. 2 years of my life, I waited. I defended you to my friends, to my family. I told them you'd come back, that you loved me, that our love was strong enough to survive any distance. And then you stopped calling. You stopped answering. You left me with nothing but silence and shame. He reached for her, and this time she let him. His arms wrapped around her, familiar and foreign all at once, and she hated herself for how right it felt. I know, he whispered into her hair. I know what I did, and I'll never forgive myself for it. But I'm here now, Adana. I'm here, and I'm asking for one thing. One memory to carry back to London with me. Something to remind me, in all that cold grayness, that I was once loved by someone like you. She pulled back to look at him. You're asking me to cheat on my fiancé. The day before my wedding. I'm asking you to say goodbye properly. His eyes were dark, intense, full of something that might have been love or might have been nostalgia dressed up as love. 1 hour. One memory. And then I'll walk away and you'll never see me again. Ifani will never know. No one will ever know. It'll be our secret, just like we used to have. Every rational thought in her head screamed no. Every moral instinct, every lesson her mother had taught her, every promise she had made to Ifani, all of it screamed at her to walk away. But the Harmattan haze seemed to seep through the windows, clouding her judgment. The weight of 6 years of hurt, 6 years of wondering what could have been, pressed down on her chest. And somewhere deep inside, in the part of her she didn't like to examine, she wanted to feel wanted. She wanted to feel that old passion, that fire that had burned so brightly before dying so completely. Just goodbye, she whispered. Just goodbye. She closed her eyes, and when she opened them again, she was kissing him. Later, she would never be able to say how much later. She lay in the tangled sheets of the hotel bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to Tun's breathing slow beside her. The curtains were still open, and through them she could see the lights of the lagoon, the distant glow of the third mainland bridge, the city sprawling endlessly in every direction. Tun's hand found hers in the darkness. "Thank you," he murmured. She didn't respond. She was too busy trying to reconstruct the woman she had been just hours ago, the bride-to-be, the faithful fiancée, the daughter her mother was proud of. That woman seemed impossibly distant now, a stranger she couldn't quite remember being. "I should go," she said finally, sitting up, reaching for her clothes. Tun caught her wrist. "Adana, wait." She turned to look at him, and for a moment, she saw something in his eyes that made her stomach drop. Not love, not regret, but something colder. Possession, maybe, or satisfaction. "I meant what I said," he told her. "This is goodbye. But if things ever change, if you ever need me, you know how to find me." She pulled her wrist free. "Things won't change, Tund. I'm getting married tomorrow." "Of course." He sat up, reaching for his own clothes, suddenly businesslike. "Of course you are. And you'll be happy. Ifani will take good care of you. You'll have beautiful children, a beautiful home, a beautiful life." He stood, pulling on his trousers. "And I'll be in London, cold and gray and alone, remembering this afternoon." She should have felt pity. She should have felt something. But all she felt was a desperate need to leave, to scrub this afternoon from her skin, to become again the woman who had woken up that morning. She dressed in silence, not looking at him, not speaking. At the door, she paused, her hand on the handle. "Goodbye, Tund. Goodbye, Adana. Be happy." She walked out without looking back. The elevator ride down was interminable. She stared at her reflection in the polished metal doors, slightly disheveled, eyes red-rimmed, lipstick smudged, and felt a wave of self-loathing so intense she had to brace herself against the wall. What had she done? What had she done? The doors opened, and she walked through the lobby with her head down, not looking left or right, not seeing the man in the armchair who watched her pass. She made it to her car, started the engine, and sat for a long moment with her forehead resting against the steering wheel. Tomorrow, she would marry Ifani. Tomorrow, she would smile and say vows and pretend that today had never happened. And somehow, she would have to live with herself. She didn't see Kunnel's car in the parking lot. She didn't see him watching her from behind his newspaper. She didn't know that her secret was no longer hers alone. She only knew that when she finally drove away from Eco Hotel, she left behind not just Tund, but a piece of herself she would never get back. The Harmattan wind followed her all the way home, dry and cold and smelling of distance. The burden of silence. December 2014 to December 2021. Kunnel didn't sleep that night. He lay on his back in his apartment in Yaba, staring at the ceiling fan as it carved lazy circles in the darkness. The Harmattan had seeped through the cracks around his windows, filling the room with that familiar dry chill, but he barely felt it. His mind was stuck on repeat, playing the same images over and over. Adana walking through the Eco Hotel lobby. The elevator stopping at the 4th floor. The long wait. Her emergence, hair slightly disheveled, eyes red-rimmed. The silver Corolla in the parking lot. License plate confirmed, guilt confirmed. He had driven home in a daze, his client meeting completely forgotten. He had sat in his car for an hour in his own parking lot, staring at his phone, his thumb hovering over Ifani's name. Call him. Tell him. Be a real friend. But what would he say? "Ifani, I saw your fiancée at a hotel today. She spent an hour in a room. I don't know what happened, but it didn't look good." He could imagine Ifani's response. The disbelief. The anger. The denial. "Kunnel, you must be mistaken. That's not Adana. You didn't see clearly. Why are you trying to ruin my happiness?" Or worse, what if Ifani believed him? What if he called off the wedding? What if he confronted Adana and she denied everything, and Ifani chose to believe her instead of Kunnel? Their 20-year friendship would be destroyed, and for what? A suspicion? A glimpse of a woman who might have been someone else. But it wasn't someone else. Kunnel knew what he saw. He had helped Ifani pick out that car at the dealership, a silver Corolla, reliable, practical, perfect for a new wife. He had seen Adana in it dozens of times. There was no mistake. Maybe it was innocent. A small voice whispered in his mind. Maybe she was meeting a relative. Maybe it was a surprise for Afani. Maybe. He cut off the thought. If it was innocent, why did she look like that when she left? Why the red eyes? Why the guilty walk? He didn't sleep. At 5 a.m., his phone buzzed. A message from Afani. Brother, today is the day. Can you believe it? See you at the church. Make sure you wear the igbado I bought you. No excuse. Kunal stared at the message, his chest tight. Ifani had bought him the igbada. Expensive lace, specially tailored. A gift of love from a groom to his best man. Ifani was that kind of friend. Generous, loyal, trusting. And Kunal was about to let him walk into a marriage built on a lie. He typed a response. I'll be there, my brother. Congratulations. Then he threw his phone on the bed and went to take a cold shower, as if he could wash away his complicity. The wedding was beautiful. St. Agnes Catholic Church in Maryland was overflowing with flowers and guests. The women wore their finest gears, bright Gelian lace, coral beads, and gold. The men looked distinguished in their igbadas and senators. Ifani stood at the altar in the deep blue igbada he had chosen specifically for this day, beaming like a man who had won the lottery of life. And then Adana appeared. She walked down the aisle on her father's arm, radiant in white, her face hidden behind a veil of French lace. The congregation gasped at her beauty. Ifani's eyes glistened with tears. Kunal, standing beside him as best man, felt his heart crack just a little. She looked like an angel. She looked like she had never done anything wrong in her life. Kunal watched her throughout the ceremony. The way she smiled at Ifani, the way she held his hand, the way she said her vows with such conviction. For better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health. She said the words like she meant them. Maybe she did mean them. Maybe yesterday was a mistake, a weakness, a moment of madness she already regretted. Maybe she would spend the rest of her life making it up to Ifani, and no one would ever need to know. Kunal decided, in that moment, to say nothing. The reception was at the Eco Hotel, the very same hotel where, just 24 hours earlier, Adana had met her ex-lover. Kunal wondered if she felt the irony, if she felt anything at all. He danced when he was supposed to dance. He gave a speech, funny, warm, full of memories of Ifani from their school days. He congratulated the couple, wished them a lifetime of happiness, raised his glass in a toast. And he smiled, and smiled, and smiled, while inside he carried a secret that grew heavier with each passing moment. 1 year later, Ifani, you sure say that wife day behave. They were sitting at a buka in Yaba, eating pepper soup and drinking beer, the way they had done since university. Ifani laughed, shaking his head. Kunal, why do you keep asking me this? Adana is a good wife. She takes care of me. She takes care of the boys. The boys, Kunal interrupted. Twins, eh? Strong boys. They look just like you. It was a test. A small one. Ifani's eyes lit up with pride. They look like their father, yes. Chitty has my nose, see? And Keen has my stubbornness. The boy argued with me for 20 minutes yesterday about why he should be allowed to eat ice cream before dinner. 20 minutes. At 4 years old. That's my spirit exactly. Kunal forced a smile. They're beautiful boys, Ifani. You're lucky. I'm blessed. Ifani raised his beer. To my boys. And to my wife, who gave them to me. Kunal clinked glasses, but the beer tasted bitter. He had watched the boys grow. He had seen them at birthdays and holidays, had held them as babies, had thrown them in the air while they shrieked with laughter. And every time he looked at them, he wondered, do you know? Do you have any idea that your father might not be your father? He pushed the thought away. It wasn't his place. It wasn't his secret to tell. But the question had become a habit now, a compulsion he couldn't control. Every time he saw Ifani, the word slipped out. You sure say she's faithful? You sure say those boys get your eyes? You sure say everything is fine at home? And Ifani would laugh, or frown, or wave him off. Kunal, why are you always asking me this? Is there something you're not telling me? And Cunnel would backpedal, make a joke, change the subject. I'm just teasing, my friend. Don't mind me. But the guilt was eating him alive. 3 years later. Ifani, you sure say. Ifani slammed his beer bottle on the table. Cunnel, enough. They were at a lounge in Victoria Island, surrounded by the usual crowd, business associates, old friends, young women in expensive dresses. But Ifani's voice cut through the noise, sharp as a blade. Every time we meet, you ask me the same question. Is my wife faithful? Are my children mine? What is this about, Cunnel? What do you know? Cunnel's heart hammered. This was his moment. This was his chance to tell the truth, to unburden himself, to let the secret finally see light. He opened his mouth, and then he saw Ifani's eyes, desperate, pleading, begging him not to say anything that would shatter the carefully constructed world he had built. Cunnel closed his mouth. Nothing, he said quietly. I know nothing. I'm just looking out for you, my brother. That's all. Ifani's shoulders relaxed. He picked up his beer, took a long drink. I know you are, Cunnel, and I appreciate it. But my home is peaceful. My wife loves me. My children are mine. Let it go, I beg. Okay, Cunnel said. I'll let it go. But he didn't let it go. He couldn't. The secret sat in his chest like a stone, growing heavier with each passing year, each new milestone in Ifani's life. He watched the boys grow taller, smarter, more like Ifani in their mannerisms and habits, and nothing like him in their faces, their features, their bone structure. He wondered if Ifani ever noticed, if some small part of him suspected, buried deep where he wouldn't look. He wondered if Adana ever thought about that December afternoon, about the man in London, about the secret she carried. And he wondered what would happen when the truth finally came out. Because secrets like this didn't stay buried forever. They had a way of surfacing, like bodies in a river, like bones in shallow ground. 6 years later, December 2021, Cunnel was at the same lounge, with the same crowd, when he saw him. A man across the room, sharp suit, confident posture, talking animatedly to a group of businessmen. Something about him was familiar, though Cunnel couldn't place it. He watched for a few minutes, trying to remember where he had seen that face before. And then it hit him. The Eco Hotel. 6 years ago. The man walking through the lobby, laughing at his phone, heading toward the elevator. Tund. Cunnel's blood ran cold. He watched Tund work the room, shaking hands, exchanging cards, the picture of success. He had come back. After all these years, he had come back. And Cunnel knew, with a certainty that made his stomach drop, that this would not end well. He pulled out his phone, stared at Ifani's name. For 6 years, he had carried this secret. For 6 years, he had watched his friend live a lie. For 6 years, he had told himself he was protecting Ifani's happiness. But Tun was back in Lagos. And if he was back, anything could happen. Tell him, a voice screamed in his head. Tell him now, before it's too late. But another voice, the same voice that had kept him silent for 6 years, whispered its familiar refrain. You've waited this long. What's a little longer? Maybe nothing will happen. Maybe Tund will leave and never cross paths with Adana. Maybe the secret will die with you. Cunnel put his phone away. He watched Tund laugh and network and charm, and he felt the weight of his silence pressing down on him like a physical thing. He didn't know that across town, Adana's phone had just buzzed with a message from an unknown number. He didn't know that Tund had already found her. He didn't know that the clock was ticking down to disaster. But he would find out. Soon enough, they all would. That night, Cunnel dreamed of bodies in rivers, of bones in shallow ground, of secrets that refused to stay buried. He woke up sweating, even in the harmattan cold. And for the first time in 6 years, he prayed. Not for himself, not for forgiveness. He prayed that when the truth finally came out, Ifani would survive it. Because Cunnel knew his friend. He knew that Ifani's love ran deep, and that when it was betrayed, the wreckage would be catastrophic. He just didn't know how catastrophic, or how soon. A blessing of twins. September 2015. Adana's pregnancy was swift and without complication. She had conceived almost immediately after the wedding, and Afani was overjoyed. He hovered over her like a mother hen, bringing her cravings at midnight, reading to her belly, talking to the babies growing inside her. They will be boys, he declared one evening, his hand pressed against her swollen stomach. 2 boys. I can feel it. When the ultrasound confirmed twins, both boys, Ifani wept with joy. He called his mother, his father, his siblings, Kunal. Twins. God has blessed me with twins. Kunal came to visit, bringing gifts for the unborn children. He watched Adana move through the house, serene and beautiful, and wondered if she ever thought about that December night. If she ever looked at Afani and felt a pang of guilt. But Adana seemed happy, genuinely happy. She laughed easily, touched Afani with affection, spoke of the future with genuine excitement. Kunal found himself hoping, desperately, that the children would look like Afani, that the secret he carried would die with him. In September, Chidi and Kina Okonkwo were born, screaming their way into the world with healthy lungs and strong hearts. Ifani held them both, one in each arm, and made a silent vow. He would give these boys everything. Every opportunity, every lesson, every ounce of love he possessed. He had no idea, in that moment of pure joy, that the foundation of his family was built on sand. The father he chose to be. 2015-2021. The years that followed were the happiest of Afani's life. He built a mini football pitch in the backyard of their Ikoyi mansion, complete with goalposts and floodlights for evening practice. He taught Chidi and Keen to ride their bicycles without training wheels, running behind them until his lungs burned and his legs ached. He read to them every night, Nigerian folktales about tortoises and cunning rabbits, stories of heroes and kings, books that taught them about their heritage and their history. Daddy, tell us about the masquerades again, Keen would beg, his eyes wide with wonder. And Afani would smile, pull the boys closer, and weave tales of the village festivals of his youth, of ancestors who walked among the living, of a culture rich with mystery and meaning. He taught them how to behave, how to greet elders with proper respect, how to look people in the eye when speaking, how to carry themselves with dignity. You are Okonkwos, he would tell them. That name means something. You must live up to it. He provided for them extravagantly, but not spoilingly. They had the best schools, the best toys, the best opportunities money could buy. But they also had chores, responsibilities, expectations. They knew that privilege came with obligation. Chidi was the quiet one, thoughtful and observant, always watching, always learning. Keen was the firecracker, loud and playful, quick to laugh and quicker to hug. They balanced each other perfectly, and Afani loved them with a ferocity that surprised him. Look at you, Adana said one evening, watching him build Lego castles with the boys on the living room floor. You were made to be a father. He looked up at her, his eyes soft with love. I was made to be their father, he agreed. He didn't know, couldn't know, that in London, Tund was building a life of his own. That the man who had said goodbye in a hotel suite 6 years ago was now climbing corporate ladders, dating white women, forgetting the promises he had whispered in the dark. The friend who kept asking. Star 2021 star. Kunal never stopped asking. Ifani, you sure say those boys get your eyes? Ifani, you sure say your wife they behave? At first, Ifani laughed it off. Then, as the years passed, the questions began to irritate him. Kunal, why do you keep asking me this? Is there something you're not telling me? Kunal would always backpedal, laugh it off, change the subject. I'm just teasing, my friend. Don't mind me. But Ifani noticed the way Kunal looked at Adana at family gatherings, not with desire, but with something like scrutiny. Like he was searching for something. Like he already knew what he would find. One evening, after too much beer at a local spot, Ifani pressed him. Kunal, we've been friends since primary school. You can tell me anything. Is there something about my wife I should know? Kunal's face went pale. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. For a moment, Ifani saw the weight of a terrible secret in his friend's eyes. Then Cunnel shook his head, forced a laugh. Ifani, you and your suspicions. Your wife is fine. Your boys are fine. Everything is fine. Ifani let it go. But the seed of doubt, planted years ago, began to send tiny roots into the soil of his certainty. The return. December 2021. Tun came back to Lagos. This time, he didn't come for Adana. He came for business, a partnership with a Nigerian firm that required his presence. But he also came to see his mother, to reconnect with his roots, to remember the country he had left behind. He didn't plan to see Adana. But Lagos is a small city for those who move in certain circles, and their paths crossed at an event in Victoria Island. She was elegant, confident, every inch the wealthy wife. He was polished, successful, every inch the London returnee. They exchanged pleasantries. Brief, polite, proper. But something stirred in Adana that night. Something she thought she had buried years ago. Tun's success, his confidence, the way he looked at her like she was still the woman he had lost. It awakened old feelings she didn't want to examine. They began texting. Innocently at first. How's business? How's the family? Remember when? Innocence curdled into familiarity. Familiarity curdled into longing. Ifani was away for a month, overseeing a business expansion in Port Harcourt. The house was quiet. The boys were at school during the day. Adana was alone with her thoughts, her regrets, her what-ifs. When Tun suggested they meet, she told herself it would be different this time. Just coffee, just conversation, just closure. But closure, she would learn, was a lie people told themselves when they wanted to open doors they should have kept locked. The second time, January 2022. The hotel was different this time. Smaller, more discreet. But the result was the same. Adana walked into that room knowing exactly what she was doing. No excuses, no self-deception. She wanted to feel something. Excitement, passion, the thrill of being desired by the man who had once broken her heart and now seemed to want her again. Tund was charming, attentive, full of compliments. You're even more beautiful now than you were 7 years ago, he told her. Motherhood suits you. She didn't tell him about Ifani's kindness, about the life they had built, about the boys who called Tund's rival daddy with all the love in their hearts. She didn't want to think about any of that. Afterwards, lying in the darkened room, she felt the familiar ache of guilt. But she pushed it down. One time. That's all. Just one more time. And then she would forget Tund forever. She didn't know, couldn't know, that in that moment, a new life was taking root inside her. A life that would unravel everything. The desperate call. February 2022. The nausea started 3 weeks later. Adana stared at the pregnancy test in disbelief, her hands shaking. Positive. She was pregnant. She did the math. Ifani had been gone for a month. He wasn't due back for another 2 weeks. This child couldn't be his. This child was Tun's. Panic seized her. She thought about abortion, briefly, guiltily, but dismissed it. She was a Catholic, raised with certain beliefs. And besides, how would she explain a clinic visit to her driver, her household staff, the network of eyes that surrounded a wealthy man's wife? There was only one option. She needed Ifani to come home. Now, before the pregnancy became too obvious, they needed to have sex to create a timeline that would make the child his. She started calling. Ifani, I miss you so much. When are you coming home? The boys keep asking for you. Can you come home this weekend? I'm lonely, Ifani. Please come home. Her urgency puzzled him. She had never been the clingy type. But he loved her, trusted her, and the longing in her voice touched something in him. I'll be home this weekend, he told her. I miss you too. The knowing. February 2022. Ifani came home on a Friday evening, exhausted from the drive, but eager to see his family. The boys tackled him at the door, and he swung them around, laughing, for a moment forgetting the strange urgency in his wife's calls. That night, Adana was more passionate than she had been in years. Ifani didn't question it. He simply enjoyed it, grateful for the renewed connection with his wife. But in the morning, watching her move through the kitchen, something caught his attention. The way she wrinkled her nose at the smell of frying plantains. The way her hand drifted to her stomach, a habit she'd had during both pregnancies. The way she asked for ginger tea, the same craving she'd had with the twins. He knew. He didn't say anything. He kissed her goodbye, went to his office, and sat in the dark for an hour, thinking. Connell's questions echoed in his mind. The memory of Adana's urgency. The timeline of his absence. He didn't want to believe it. He couldn't believe it. But he couldn't unsee it either. The test. March 2022. For 3 weeks, Ifani said nothing. He watched. He waited. He hoped he was wrong. But the signs were unmistakable. Adana was pregnant. And if his calculations were correct, and they were, the child couldn't be his. One Saturday afternoon, he announced a treat. "I'm taking the boys for ice cream," he told Adana. His voice was calm, measured. She didn't notice the tremor in his hands. Chitty and Keen were ecstatic. Ice cream. Ice cream. They bounced around him as he buckled them into the car, chattering about which flavors they would choose. He didn't drive to the ice cream parlor. He drove to a medical lab, a private one, recommended by a friend who valued discretion. "Daddy, where are we?" Keen asked, peering out the window. "It's a game," Ifani said, his voice gentle. "A special checkup for strong boys. Just a quick thing, and then we'll get the biggest ice creams in Lagos." The cheek swabs took seconds. The boys giggled at the strange tickling sensation. They didn't ask questions. They trusted their father completely. Ifani drove them to the best ice cream shop in Victoria Island and watched them lick their cones with sticky joy. His heart was breaking, but his face showed nothing. "The results will be ready in a week," the lab technician had said. A week. 7 days until his world would either be confirmed or redeemed. The truth. March 2022. The envelope sat on his desk for an hour before he opened it. Ifani had driven home from the lab in a daze, the envelope burning on the passenger seat beside him. He had told his secretary he wasn't to be disturbed. He had poured himself a glass of whiskey he didn't drink. When he finally tore open the envelope, the words blurred before his eyes. He blinked, forced himself to focus. Probability of paternity, 0%. He read it again, and again, and again. Probability of paternity, 0%. Not just for one child. For both. Chitty and Keen. The boys he had raised, loved, sacrificed for. The boys who called him daddy. The boys whose scraped knees he had bandaged, whose nightmares he had soothed, whose futures he had planned. None of them were his. He drove to Connell's house. His friend took one look at his face and knew. "I saw her," Connell said quietly. "The day before your wedding. At the Eco Hotel. With that man, Tund. I saw her car. I waited. I knew." Ifani stared at him. "You knew? For 7 years you knew? I didn't know how to tell you." Connell's voice cracked. "You loved her so much. You were so happy. I couldn't be the one to destroy that. I'm sorry, Ifani. I'm so sorry." Ifani didn't stay to hear more. He had a wife to confront. The confrontation. March 2022. Adana was in the living room when he walked in, scrolling through her phone, looking peaceful and content. The picture of domestic tranquility. He stood in the doorway, watching her. This woman he had loved. This woman he had trusted. This woman who had lied to him every single day of their marriage. Ifani. She looked up, smiling. "You're home early. How was your day?" He walked to the glass center table and placed the DNA report face up in front of her. She looked at it, looked at him, looked at it again. Her face crumbled. "No," she whispered. "Ifani, please." "Read it," he said. His voice was calm, terrifyingly calm. "I don't need to read it. Please, let me explain." "Read it. Louder now. Sharper." She read. The color drained from her face. She slid off the sofa onto her knees, crawling toward him, grasping at his legs. "It was just one night. Both times, just one night. Tun came back, and I was weak, and I'm so sorry, Ifani. Please, forgive me. Don't throw away our family because of one mistake." He looked down at her. This woman who had been his wife for 7 years, the mother of the children he adored. and felt nothing but a vast, empty silence where his love used to be. "What didn't I do for you, Adana?" he asked quietly. "What didn't I give you? Love? Respect? Provision? I gave you everything. And this is how you repay me. Please, you will pack your things. You will take the children. And you will leave this house today." She sobbed, clutching at him. "The children, they love you. You can't just. I will not abandon them." His voice broke for the first time. "I will send money for their school fees, their food, everything they need. They are innocent in all of this. But you? I cannot look at you again. Get out." The disappearing father. April 2022. Adana called Tun the night she moved into the cramped flat in Acacia. He answered on the second ring. "Adana, is everything okay?" She told him everything. The DNA test, Ifani's discovery, her expulsion from the house. She told him about the pregnancy, about the child that was his. She told him she needed him. Silence stretched on the other end of the line. "Tund, are you there?" "I'm here." His voice was different now, colder. "Adana, I'm sorry about everything. But I can't. I'm engaged. Her name is Sarah. She's British. The wedding is in 3 months. I can't just. She's carrying your child, Tund. I didn't ask for this." His words were sharp. "You made choices. I made choices. I'm sorry, but I can't be part of this." He hung up. She called again, and again, and again. Each time, it went straight to voicemail. He had blocked her. Tund, the man for whom she had sacrificed her marriage, the father of her unborn child, had disappeared back into his London life as if she had never existed. She sat in her empty flat, surrounded by unpacked boxes, listening to Chitty and Keen whisper in the next room. "When is Daddy coming to take us for ice cream?" Chitty asked. She had no answer. She had never lacked anything with the Ifani. Now, she had nothing but regret. The father he will always be. May 2022. The black Mercedes pulled up outside the flat at exactly 10 a.m. every other Saturday. Chitty and Keen were always waiting at the window, pressing their noses to the glass, scanning the street for the familiar car. When they saw it, they exploded with joy, racing each other to the door, tumbling down the stairs, launching themselves into Ifani's arms. "Daddy, Daddy, can we get vanilla this time? Daddy, I finished all my homework. Daddy, Keen had a nightmare about monsters. Can you tell us the story about the tortoise?" Ifani held them close, breathing in the smell of their hair, their skin, their childhood. They were not his by blood. The DNA test had proven that beyond any doubt. But they were his in every way that mattered. They spent Saturdays at the park, at the cinema, at the ice cream parlor. They built sandcastles at the beach, flew kites on the marina, ate suya from roadside vendors while Ifani pretended not to notice the grease stains on their shirts. He taught them new things: how to whistle, how to tie their shoelaces, how to say thank you in 3 languages. One evening, after dropping them home, a new thought lodged itself in his mind. How had Adana gotten pregnant so easily, twice, while he had never fathered a child? He booked an appointment with a fertility specialist. The tests were quick, the verdict clinical. "Chief Okonkwo," the doctor said gently, "you have a very low sperm count. It is highly unlikely you could have fathered any child naturally." Ifani sat in the doctor's office, absorbing the news. He would never have biological children. The twins were not his, and he could never have children of his own. But as he drove home, his phone pinged. A video from Keen, sent via the nanny's phone. The boys were building a Lego castle. "We're building you a castle, Daddy," Chitty's voice chirped, "for you to come and live in it with us." Ifani pulled the car over, his vision blurring. He watched the video again, and again, and again. The DNA test had revealed a biological truth, but it was powerless against the truth of his heart. Those boys were his. They were the product of his sacrifices, his teachings, his love. They carried his name. They knew his stories. They trusted him completely. He started the car and drove home, already planning the next Saturday's adventure. He would get the treatment to boost his sperm count, not because he needed a child of his own to feel complete, but because he wanted to try. And in the meantime, he would continue to be the best father he could be to the two boys waiting for their next Saturday with their dad. The weight of a name, he realized, was far heavier than the weight of blood, and he would carry it with pride. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed The Weight of a Name. If this story touched your heart, please don't forget to like this video and share it with your friends and family. Let them experience this emotional journey too. And if you want more amazing African stories, tales of love, betrayal, family, and redemption, hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new chapter. Your support means the world to us. See you in the next story.